Next, we've got an exciting presentation from Michael KININMONTH about zero carbon TENCEL. Michael, I know you're online. Maybe you want to introduce yourself, and then I believe you have a video to show us as a presentation. There you are. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
Hello. Hello. Yes. So my name is Michael KININMONTH. I work for Lenzing Fibers, based in Austria, headquartered in Austria. I'm based in the UK, by the way. So my talk is about carbon and reducing carbon and carbon zero, something that is probably should be the top of everybody's agenda, because it's the main thing that really faces us going forward in the next decade, and we really need to increase the urgency. And so I'm really talking about what Lenzing is doing in their product range.
Great. Interesting. And you've got a film to show us, I believe.
Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Michael KININMONTH, and I'm part of the Lenzing Denim team. And today I'm going to talk about a subject that will probably dominate your and my life for the decades to come. So first of all, just to talk about what we do as Lenzing. So we make textile fibers. We make textile fibers primarily from wood. So if you see the top line there, we go from wood chips to pulp, and then to fiber. More recently, we've started using waste products in our supply chain. So we can take cotton as a cellulose source, and we make cotton pulp, and we blend it with our wood pulp to make fibers. So our fibers sit there under what is called man-made fibers, but man-made fibers from natural polymers. So the fibers that we make are viscose and TENCEL modal and TENCEL lyocell. And here are a few of the products that our fibers go into. So as a company supplying into the textile and apparel industry, our day-to-day business has become dominated by sustainability issues. And there you can see some of the major issues that we have to tackle day to day. The one I'm talking about today is to do with climate change. Now, this is a subject which really has become front and center for everybody, not just governments and companies, but individuals. Only last week, the IPCC published this report. So the IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And in this report, they say, without immediate and deep emission reductions across all sectors, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees C is a total requirement for the globe. Textiles and apparel industry has a role to play in averting it, and it repeats and has emphasized there's a need to shift to what they call biotextiles. So here's a quotation from Caroline Lucas, who is a Green Party MP in the UK. And she's saying there's no silver bullet to tackle the climate emergency. We do have realistic and genuine solutions, from rapidly winding down fossil fuels to reversing the depletion of our natural world's carbon sinks. But it's saying the only thing we lack is political will to deliver them. Another quotation here is from the UN General Secretary, and he says, this latest report is a litany of broken climate promises. Some governments and business leaders are saying one thing, but doing another. They are lying. It's time to stop burning our planet. So quite a stark message there, really. So if we accept that global warming comes from greenhouse gases, then here is a chart that's showing most of the greenhouse gases. So it's not only about carbon dioxide. There are many other gases that affect global warming. So most of you know carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide. They're found in the atmosphere anyway, despite human activity, but their increase in concentrations is down to human activity, such as burning fossil fuels and agricultural activities, so livestock, rice paddies, and the use of nitrogen-based fertilizers. Not all green gases have the same heat trapping abilities. So as you will see there on the right, they have what is called global warming potential. So if we take carbon dioxide as a global warming potential as 1, you see that something like methane and nitrous oxide has significantly higher global warming potential. So here we have an infographic, and this is about understanding where emissions come from. Something called the Greenhouse Gas Protocol classifies greenhouse emissions in 3 ways, and they call them scopes. So scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So scope 1 is emissions that are directly owned and controlled by a company. Scope 2 are emissions that are indirect emissions, but they're from generation of energy that that company uses. And scope 3 are emissions that are indirect emissions and not within the control of a company. They occur in the value chain where that company sits. They can be upstream and they can be downstream. The vast majority of emissions lie in the supply chain. So as you can see there, they give the name tier to different elements of the supply chain. So where we sit as a fiber supplier, we are regarded as tier 4. And fibers come from tier 4, tier 3 is raw material processing, etc., etc. And there you can see that an analysis from something called the Roadmap to Net Zero report, and this was produced by the World Resource Institute as well as the Apparel Impact Institute. They use data from the HIG, they use data from Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and they use data from Textile Exchange. And they are estimating that the apparel sector emissions are at about just over 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide equivalents, or roughly 2% of annual global greenhouse gases. Left unchecked, this will rise to over 1.5 gigatons by 2030. Tier 4, which is the fiber tier, that is responsible for approximately a quarter of all CO2 equivalent emissions. If you look at this infographic, this is an infographic that has taken the average of emissions from about 30 brands and retailers. And as you can see there, scope 3, which are emissions outside of their control, actually dominate their total emissions. And that is why they're very reliant on the supply chain. The further down the supply chain you are, the more reliant you are on your suppliers. Brands and retailers need responsible fiber manufacturers in their supply chain. So carbon reductions are key. The Paris Agreement was a landmark international accord that was adopted by nearly every nation in 2015 to address climate change and negative impacts. The European Green Deal provides an action plan to boost the efficiency use of resources by moving to a clean, circular economy and to restore biodiversity and cut pollution. The European Green Deal covers all sectors of the economy, notably transport, energy, agriculture, and industries such as steel, cement, and textiles. So what is Lenzing doing? All companies have the option to do one of two things: reduce or offset emissions. If there's one thing that you need to take away from this presentation today, is that reduction is the approach that everybody should be taking. Reduction has to be the primary activity. In many cases, companies cannot reduce all their emissions. There has to be some kind of offsetting, but offsets are an action of last resort. So this is a three-step approach we take. Reduction is the primary activity. It's engaging with the supply chains, both our suppliers and our customers, and those things that we cannot deal with, we have to do some offsetting. But like I said, this is an action of last resort. So science-based targets. So the Science-Based Target Initiative drives ambitious climate action in the private sector. It helps organizations to set targets. Those targets adopted by companies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are considered science-based if they are in line with the level of decarbonisation required to keep global temperature increase below 2 degrees, compared to pre-industrial temperatures, as described by the IPCC. It is a transparent public commitment to decarbonisation. And all of these organisations are supporting the Science Based Target Initiative. Today, April 2022, you can see that 2,811 companies are taking action. First of all, you have to present your plan, and the Science Based Targets Initiative then looks at your plan, and if they approve, then you move on to another level. So 1,391 have made commitments and 1,286 have had their commitments approved by Science Based Targets. So science-based approach considers absolute emissions. So scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And Lenzing's approach is that they will reduce CO2 emissions by 50% by 2030. And by 2050, they will be at net zero. This is measured against a baseline of 2017. So this is the plan for Lenzing. Every company has an individual plan. The offset approach is something that is acceptable, but it shouldn't be the primary activity, because no or little reductions take place if this is the only thing a company can do. And of course, different companies are in different positions. So an airline company will find with current technology very difficult to reduce emissions. But where possible, every company should be trying to reduce. Lenzing's activity to reduce fall into roughly 3 categories. So cleaner energy, efficient production, and raw materials. And within those categories, there are several activities going on to achieve those reductions. On where you can't reduce, you offset. So here are 3 areas that Lenzing are supporting with offsetting. There is a project in India for solar water heating, in Bangladesh for improving cooking stoves, and in Thailand for landfill gas to energy. So Lenzing solutions are responsible sourcing, reduction in CO2, sustainable innovations and circularity, and transparency and partnerships. All this is going on at the same time, and it is complex, but it's something that Lenzing is committing to, and it is the primary activity of what Lenzing is doing in the sustainability area. So what does this really mean for customers? So now we are offering verified carbon neutral fibers. These fibers have net zero emissions, and these fibers are verified by an organization called Climate Partner, and they're based on scientific data. There are a list of fibers that we offer to the market that are carbon zero. So TENCEL lyocell, TENCEL modal, TENCEL lyocell micro, TENCEL modal micro, TENCEL modal eco-pure, and TENCEL modal micro. As recognition of this, Lenzing has been recognized by Carbon Disclosure Project. So Lenzing is only one of 14 companies worldwide that was recognized with an outstanding AAA award for leadership in climate change, water security, and forests. So Lenzing has been recognized for leadership in corporate sustainability by this non-profit organization. So this is something that we're very proud of, and this just underlines the action that Lenzing is trying to take in the area of carbon reduction. So finally, I would just like to address you and say, there are some words by a writer called James Baldwin, and he said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I realized that working through climate despair, cynicism, defeatism can be challenging, but we can't delay any further. You are a generation born into the reality of climate change and global heating. I believe that you have both the courage and the ambition to help lead the way in confronting it. So today, my message and challenge to you, the audience, is to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Thank you very much for that, Michael. Maybe I can kick off with a question myself. So you said 1 of 14, and actually when you talked about the amount of companies that are actually trying to get their science-based targets approved, that seems very low number. What is the barrier for entry into this journey that companies are facing? Why aren't they following suit and following your good example?
That's a good question. There's nothing stopping companies. I think in the area of sustainability, one of my earliest slides had about at least 8 or 10 different subjects. And if we have 20 inquiries a day from brands, retailers, NGOs, whatever, they're probably on 20 different subjects. It's kind of almost an avalanche of requests on all kinds of things, water, on forestry and everything else. What I've tried to emphasize here is actually something new comes up every year, and I would say carbon reduction has to be everybody's focus now, because it's going to be the one thing that overtakes everything else. Why are no companies doing it? I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, they should be named and shamed. There was only a report this week, an article in The Guardian in the UK, saying even those companies who are reporting on carbon, a lot of them aren't even, they're only reporting scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. And if you remember one of my earlier slides, it's actually scope 3. It's those things outside of their control they're not even reporting on, because they're not even engaging with the supply chain. It's complicated. We've talked to brands and retailers about this, and a lot of them say we understand about it, but we don't even know where to start.
Yeah. You could almost have another job, I think, Michael, promoting how you've gone about it in your own journey from the Lenzing perspective, couldn't you? As the best example. Yeah,
I mean, we don't know anything. We are just finding our way as well. It's complicated, but our sustainability team grows and grows year on year because of the demands.
Yeah. So I have some other questions. A question from Desiree. She was saying, how informed is the consumer about the information on your labels? Do you work with brands to promote what's on your labels for that understanding at consumer level?
We try. I would say until about 5 years ago, all our activity was really B2B. We've really tried to put some effort and resources behind B2C, but it's difficult. And what I would say, and I've said this many times, I think that because of a lot of the messages are based on science or technology, it's difficult to know who understands them. If you see a label with some scientific statement on there, how do you contextualize it?
That might be a good one for AMFI students.
Well, I almost think it's too late. When I think this thing should be taught from an early age. I think this should be part of the curriculum for all students. I've seen it for myself in the US, where one high school, adopted a curriculum based on sustainability, and it totally engaged the students. I mean, totally, to the point where, achievement of qualifications and reductions in truancy was really significant, because they understood how it affected their lives. So I think if you're brought up understanding these things, it's much easier to understand the message.
Yeah. Related to that, I had a question from Ellis saying, if companies say we don't know where to start, that's very genuine, obviously, could TENCEL maybe spread the methodologies to other fabric production companies? So maybe open source, open information.
Well, I think, the one way I think that I tell, people say, well, how do which companies are acting sustainably or responsibly? And I always say, well, the first thing to see is how open are they? What kind of information have they got on their website and everything else? And I think that, I would say that Lenzing is one of those people. If you go on the website, there's tons of information, and we internally have our sustainability team give a monthly update to all our people who are customer facing. So we are trying to arm our own people to be able to spread the message. And if it's not detailed enough, we can always refer them back to our sustainability team, who can talk about things in real detail. We're absolutely wanting to spread the message, because I would say, why are we not sold out of all our fibers that are carbon zero? That's my question back. Yes, why are we not sold out?
Well, it's a good place to be today to share your message, at least to a younger generation as well, if they're the ones that can make some change as well. There are some more questions in the chat, in the Q&A for you, Michael. Maybe you have some time to answer those individually now. I'm very aware of time. I believe we have a commercial break just till 5 o'clock, so we'll be back at 5 o'clock for those of you just need to have a short caffeine break or something. But Michael, once again, thank you very much. It was very interesting indeed.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.